Before we can go any further, we need to introduce some more terms of reference. We must define some more intervals. In this case, the intervals between the different notes of a major scale. Using the notes of a C major scale, the interval names are as follows. C to itself, or the same note, is called a unison. C to D is called a major second. C to E is called a major third. C to F is called a perfect fourth. C to G a perfect fifth. C to A a major sixth. C to B a major seventh. And C to C an octave above is called an octave. So unison, major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, and an octave. It is not sufficient just to know the names of these intervals. We also need to know how they sound. This is arguably the most important music lesson you will ever have. This is the basic, core, underlying language of music. Just like in a language, like French or English or German, we associate sounds with certain letters. Like A, we would say A, or B, B. In music, we associate sounds with intervals. You should not move beyond this part of the course unless you have a fundamental understanding of intervals and how they sound. I use as a basic rule that if you can't sing it, you don't know it. So let's begin. Let's look at the first interval, the unison. Unisons are easy. It's basically the same note twice. We can all recognise someone when they play the same note twice, so it's easy. This is what the unison sounds like. Now let's take a look at the major second. The major second is C to D, or two notes a tone apart. You already know what this sounds like. It sounds like the first two different notes of Happy Birthday. Let's hear what it sounds like. Now let's take a look at the major third. The major third is C to E, which is two tones apart. You already know what this sounds like because it's the first two notes of When the Saints Go Marching In, which everybody knows. It sounds like this. Let's take a look at the perfect fourth. The perfect fourth is from C to F. It's two tones and one semitone apart. You already know what this sounds like because it's the wedding march. Let's see what that sounds like. Let's take a look at the perfect fifth. The perfect fifth is from C to G, which is three tones and one semitone apart. You already know what this sounds like because it's the first two different notes of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, or Star Wars. Let's see what it sounds like. Now let's take a look at the major sixth, which is C to A. That is 4 tones and 1 semitone apart. You already know this because it's the first 2 notes of My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. It's also the first 2 notes of a jazz standard called The Days of Wine and Roses. Let's see what it sounds like. We're going to jump now to the octave and then we'll go back and do the major seventh. The octave is C to C, an octave above. We already know what that sounds like because it's the first 2 notes of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Let's see what that sounds like. Now let's jump back and do the major seventh. The major seventh is the interval between the C and the B. We already know what that sounds like because it's the interval between the first and the 3rd note of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Let's see what that sounds like. You should learn these intervals until they are completely second nature to you and it's effortless for you to recognise these sounds. That's the most important lesson you will ever learn, as I said at the beginning. Do not move forward unless you can do this. Do not get lazy about this. Quite simply put, all the best musicians are those musicians with the best ears. If it's your intention to become a professional musician, this is absolutely paramount. If you have a friend, ask him to test you. There are also websites that have little apps that will allow you to practice this. You can also download apps for your phone that will enable you to practice this kind of thing. Practice it until you are perfect. Here is a little test. See if you can recognise what these intervals are. That was a perfect 4th. That was a major 2nd. That was a major 3rd. That was a major 7th. That was a major 6th. That was an octave. That was a perfect 5th. So far in this course, we've only discussed single notes, or a single major scale. Now we're going to introduce some harmony, or in other words, playing more than one note at the same time. We're now going to introduce the concept of chords. First of all, let's take a look at the C major scale. For the coming process, it'd be much easier, rather than looking at any individual scale, that instead of calling the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, we assign numbers to each of these scale tones, because this applies to all 12 major scales, not just a C major scale. Right, let's begin. Chords are built in thirds. A major chord is made up of the root, the third, and the fifth. A C major chord is made up of C, E, and G. Let's listen to how that sounds. A minor chord is made up of the root, the flattened third, and the fifth. A C minor chord is made up of C, E flat, and G. This is what it sounds like. A major chord is perceived by the listener as being happy. A minor chord is perceived as being sad or melancholy. The two chords we've spoke about so far are either major or minor. They are three-part chords, simply meaning they've got three notes in them. We are going to talk now about some four-part chords. These are chords with four notes in them. What we're going to do is simply stack another third on the top. So we will have the root, the third, the fifth, and additionally the seventh. The first chord we're going to look at is a major seventh chord. A major seventh chord is made up of the root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh from a major scale. In a C major seventh chord, the notes are C, E, G, and B. This is what it sounds like. The next chord we're going to look at is a dominant seventh, for example, C seventh. A C dominant chord is made up of the root, the third, the fifth, or a major triad, and the flattened seventh. In a C dominant seventh chord, or C seventh, the notes are C, E, G, and B flat. This is what it sounds like. The last chord we're going to look at is a minor seventh. A minor seventh is made up of the root, the flattened third, and the fifth, a minor triad, and a flattened seventh. A C minor seventh chord is made up of C, E flat, G, and B flat. This is what it sounds like. Similarly, with the intervals that we spoke about earlier in this video, with these chords, you should be able to recognize each chord type by ear. That is very important. You should also be able to sing each of these chord arpeggios. An arpeggio is basically a scale made up of the chord tones. So you should be able to sing a basic major arpeggio, a minor arpeggio. You should also then practice singing a major seventh arpeggio, a dominant seventh arpeggio, and a minor seventh arpeggio. As I said earlier, if you can't sing it, you don't know it.